Okay, so today we're going to be diving into a topic that I think is really fascinating, and it's something that a lot of people struggle with, I think,
Yeah.
and that is celibacy,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not looking at it like, oh no, celibacy.
Right.
More like, celibacy. What could this be? What is this season all about?
Yeah.
And we are looking at this through the lens of a podcast called Happy Celibacy, which
Oh, interesting.
I know, right? Happy Celibacy. So they are coming at this from a biblical perspective.
Okay.
And it's really interesting how they frame it as this time
Mm.
of like potential and growth.
Yeah.
And like not just, okay, well, I'm just waiting for marriage and then I'll finally be happy.
Yeah.
It's more like, no, what can you get out of this time?
Yeah, I like that. So it's more like, instead of viewing it as like a waiting room for marriage, it's its own thing, its own
Right.
important, valuable time in your
Yeah,
life.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they talk about is this idea of like seasons,
Oh.
seasons of life. And they actually pull from Ecclesiastes 3.1,
Hmm.
which is, you know, there's the time for everything, a time to plant, a time to harvest, all these different seasons,
Yeah, that's beautiful imagery there.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And so they're kind of saying, like, just like in nature, there's different seasons.
Right.
Our lives have seasons too.
Mm-hmm.
And so being single is a season.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget that.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in where we think we should be or, comparing ourselves to other people
Absolutely.
that we forget that, there's a rhythm to life
Right.
and it's okay to be in the season that you're in.
Yeah. Like embrace the season you're in.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. And then another thing that they talk about is contentment, which I think is really
Oh,
important.
yeah. Contentment is huge, isn't it?
And they talk about 1 Timothy 6.6, which says that godliness with contentment is great gain.
That's a good one. It is hard to find contentment sometimes, though, like when you feel like you're lacking something.
Totally.
So how do they talk about finding that contentment?
Well, I think it's interesting because they're not saying, just be happy with nothing.
Right.
It's more like be grateful for what you do have. Like shift your focus.
Yeah. Appreciate the good.
Exactly. What are you grateful for right now?
Oh, yeah.
Even if you're like, I'm single.
Yeah, exactly. Because even if things aren't perfect, there's always something to be thankful for.
Absolutely. And I think that ties in really well to their next point, which is about purpose.
Okay, purpose. Yeah, that's a big one.
And, obviously they're pulling from the Bible for this.
Right.
And they go to Proverbs 16.4, which basically says that God has a purpose for everything.
Everything, huh?
Under heaven.
Oh, wow.
So even celibacy, right?
Yeah, okay. So what do they say the purpose of singlehood could be then?
Well, one thing they talk about is spiritual growth. Like you have more time and energy to really focus on your relationship with God.
Okay.
Which I think makes sense if you think about it. You're not, having to balance your time and energy with a romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm, that's true. More time for prayer, for studying, for serving.
Exactly. And they actually bring up 1 Corinthians 7.32, which says that if you're unmarried, you can be less divided in your devotion to the Lord.
That's interesting.
Yeah, like you can be all in.
Yeah, all in. That's a good way to put it.
And they also talk about, serving others. Like you have more freedom and flexibility to, volunteer or travel or just really invest in your community.
Yeah, that's true. You're not tied down by the commitments of a relationship. So, you could even take more risks, try new things, maybe step outside of your comfort zone a little bit.
Totally. And I think, even though they're really emphasizing the positives of this season, they're also acknowledging that, a lot of people desire marriage.
Of course. Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, how can you use this time to prepare for that?
Okay, that makes sense. So it's kind of like, even if marriage is the goal, you can still make the most of this season.
Exactly.
To get ready for it, to be the best partner that you can be.
Totally. And they talk about, building a strong foundation for a future relationship.
Right.
By first becoming whole and complete in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like they talk about this idea that a really strong marriage is two individuals coming together who are already like, solid.
Two whole pies, not two halves, trying to make a whole.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. And it's so funny because they bring up Ecclesiastes again.
Oh, okay.
Ecclesiastes 3.11.
Okay, what does that one say?
Well, it's basically saying that God makes everything beautiful in its time.
Oh, I like that.
So it's like, even though, you might desire marriage, this time of being single
Yeah.
is beautiful too. And it's important.
It has its own purpose. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's about, you know, becoming the best version of yourself.
Right. Preparing yourself.
Like, what are some areas where I can grow?
Yeah.
How can I mature?
So it's about, taking responsibility for your own personal growth.
Yes.
And making the most of this time.
Exactly. And I think that's where their analogy of planting seeds comes in.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
So they talk about Psalm 1.23.
Okay.
Which is this beautiful imagery of a tree.
Okay.
That's planted by streams of water.
Okay.
That yields its fruit in season. And so they're saying, like, this season of celibacy is like planting seeds.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful.
The growth that you experience now will bear fruit in the future.
Yeah. So even if you can't see the results immediately,
right,
like, the work that you're doing now is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what kind of fruit are we talking about here? Like, what kind of growth?
Well, it could be greater self-awareness.
Okay.
Stronger faith. Deeper compassion. A clearer sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And, they're saying these are all qualities that not only benefit you,
right,
but any future relationships that you have.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I love that because it's not just about, being ready for marriage. It's about being a better person overall.
Right, exactly. Becoming the best version of yourself.
Yes. And they also really emphasize that your relationship with God is the foundation for everything else.
Yeah, I think that's so important because, your worth and identity shouldn't be tied to whether or not you're in a relationship.
Right.
It comes from something much deeper.
Absolutely.
And I think when you have that foundation, you're free to really embrace any season of life.
Yeah, that's so well said. So to kind of sum up, like, what Happy Celibacy is trying to tell us, it seems like they really want us to view this as a time for growth and preparation and to focus on contentment, cultivate a deep relationship with God.
Right.
And that in turn, like, lays a foundation for everything else.
Makes sense.
And I think it's so perfect. Their emoji for the episode was the seedling emoji.
Oh, that's good.
Like patience pays off.
I love that. It's such a good visual, right? Like that little seed growing underground. You can't see it.
Right.
But it's happening.
Yes.
And then eventually it'll sprout and blossom.
It's true. And it reminds me of that quote, the greatest oak was once a little nut who held its ground.
Oh, I like that.
So like, don't underestimate the power of this season.
Yeah.
Even though it may feel like a time of waiting, it's really a time of becoming.
Absolutely.
So I guess as we wrap up, I have a question for you to think about.
Okay, I'm ready.
If you view this season of your life as a time of planting seeds, what kind of fruit do you hope to see bloom in the future?
That's a good one. I'll have to think about that. Thanks for giving me something to chew on.
You got it. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
Of course, it was fun.
All right, see you next time.
See ya.